Go Elaine.
Long COVID, Marcus Hemsley, UK. They say when you're having a tough time, you need to take it one day at a time. I found when I was struggling to breathe and thought I was dying, you really need to take it 1 second at a time. It was March 2020. I'd come down with a nasty case of COVID. I was very short of breath, but the paramedics on the phone said they were extremely busy and to call back if my lips were turning blue. It felt like I was in a nightmare. But I told myself if I could just stay alive and get better over the next few weeks, everything would be fine. But it wouldn't be. I didn't get better. 5 months later, I was diagnosed with a new disease. They call it long COVID. I don't want a new effing disease. I remember shouting. I didn't want any disease, let alone a new one they knew nothing about. And judging by the last 5 months, one I could never recover from, I was in agony every day and could hardly do anything. I remember having a call with my grandmother in her 90s and feeling like she was more able than me. Was that it? In the space of a few months, my health had gone from a fit 35-year-old to a frail 95-year-old. It didn't seem fair. I'd love to tell you I then discovered the 3 principles and was cured instantly. But sadly, this story is more ironic, although in some ways more transformative. You see, I'd been impacted profoundly by Sid Banks' teaching many years before. At university in 2005, I spotted a book in Waterstones next to the philosophy section where I was buying books for my course. It was by Michael Neal. I picked it up and something about his writing resonated with me. I felt kinder, more human than any other NLP type books I read. A few years later, I found myself at a 3-day seminar with Michael. At the end, he said to us that he was putting on a bonus day to talk about something new he'd come across. I signed up and heard about the inside out understanding. I must confess, at the time, I intellectualized it and filed it in my mind as another technique. But when I got home, I took my girlfriend for a walk and told her about what I learned. It was all about ideas from the bonus day. And I wept as I realized how hard I'd been about both of us achieving our goals. In 2014, I was on a train. I had Michael's latest book, The Inside Out Revolution, and Dr. Carlson's Stop Thinking and Start Living. I was flicking between both books when I read 2 lines that helped me see something life-changing. When illusionary sadness comes from memories, don't try to figure it out. Please don't try to do that. You'll get yourself in trouble. All you have to do is realize that it's just thought. Your thoughts aren't real. If you can understand that your thoughts aren't real, you could stop reading right now because you would feel a tremendous sense of relief and would have realized how to create happiness in your life forever. After seeing the truth of those words, I slipped into a warm and beautiful feeling for a few weeks. I then, of course, got caught up in everyday life and returned to having a busy mind. For the next 6 years, I would revisit 3P's content when I was stressed out. In 2018, I burned out, so I spent 3 days working directly with Michael Neal. It was powerful and helped me return to work a few weeks later. But in 2020, with long COVID, I decided it was a real medical issue, not stress related. So I needed to go big on medical treatments. I hired private doctors and did all types of tests, blood, DNA, etc. Mapped out my whole body and got to work on diet, sleep, and very light exercise. Everything was obsessed about and measured to the 9th degree. It was only in late 2021, as I was making some small progress, one of my doctors said, "Marcus, you're doing well with everything we're telling you to do, but there's still one big area that you are ignoring, your mental health." I was also working with a leadership trainer at the time, Dr. Alan Watkins, who did a 3-day heart rate variability test on me. It proved I was in fight or flight a lot of the time, that my heart rate was chaotic, not coherent. The message was loud and clear. I decided to turn back to the 3Ps. Dr. Joe Bailey had just released a new book, so I got it. There, I read Hannah Studley's story and wondered if she might be able to help me. I reached out to her and we began working together. The first thing she helped me see is that I have an inner speed. While I've been pacing myself externally, Inside, I had a lot of hurried and stressed thinking, which was making my symptoms even worse. I hadn't left the house for almost 2 years apart from medical things and could hardly play with my kid. My stressed thinking was keeping my nervous system revved up, and my symptoms weren't having a chance to calm down. Hannah also taught me to not layer stress and worry thinking onto my symptoms. I remember her saying to me once, "What if you didn't have anything on it?" I didn't understand and said, "Could you put that into English from America, please?" She smiled and said, "What if you didn't have any of this worried thinking and emotions from it about your symptoms? Then I'd just have a headache, feel a bit tired and dizzy, but be getting on with my day, right?" She said. "Then just do that." At that point, I saw it, and it was the way out. While it wasn't already easy, life is a contact sport. I was able to start catching myself and letting go of worried thinking about long COVID. I went back to work in February 2022 and have since led a normal life again. I'm a lot happier than I was before COVID. Life seems more magical as well. I occasionally get symptoms, but they don't bother me anymore. I remember saying to Hannah, "I feel like a man released from prison." It turns out it was a mental one rather than a physical one.
Oh, I'm gonna stop the recording so we could just talk a little bit if anybody wants to. And then we'll come back on and one of us will read illness, anxiety disorder, hypochondria, written by somebody in France. So I'm gonna stop the recording. There we go. Pause. You know what? I could just pause it. Okay. So this is page 245, illness, anxiety disorder, hypochondria, by somebody in France. Our first child was born in Paris in 1987, and our sister-in-law was our pediatrician. She kindly helped me get over the unwanted cesarean and guided us through the compulsory vaccination system. It was devastating for me. It was devastating for me one night to have to catch the speeding bus home from a consultation with our coughing baby hugged close to a snuggly bag. I felt judged and guilty. Was this whooping cough brought on by the vaccination? I feared the worst. I started to make mountains out of the molehills from what the doctor told me. This is what I heard her say. If your baby stops breathing, don't worry. She gave me a home remedy. Take your pressure cooker and bring a handful of eucalyptus leaves to the boil to create plenty of fragrant steam. I didn't have any eucalyptus leaves in our Paris apartment. I was so afraid that my baby would stop breathing because I didn't have the remedy and didn't know how to get it. When my husband came home, anxious to know the diagnosis, I couldn't tell him for sure. That made him angry. I wasn't on the lookout for a diagnosis. It was either a cough or a cold as far as I was concerned. What I was after was an effective remedy, the doctor's prescription. I learned after that to ask for and memorize the diagnoses. We moved to Nantes in the Loire Valley, and 2 more children were born. Over the next 5 years, we depended on prescribed antibiotics and painkillers for never-ending coughs and colds. I believed we had no choice but to trust the medical system. But it was a two-edged sword because I also felt that vaccinations could be lethal, and I knew that antibiotics didn't work. We had a group of family doctors in our village who conveniently made home visits. My husband, who had his own law firm, suffered from migraines and serious allergies, which escalated dramatically into angioedema after we both gave up smoking. A couple of times he needed an emergency cortisone injection in the small hours of the morning. My behavior was surprising in the circumstances. I was present in the moment, reassuring, cheerful, encouraging, and welcoming to the doctors. But afterwards, I judged myself severely and felt guilty. When our firstborn suffered from unexplained stomach pains, my heart sank. I was very anxious. I trusted the family doctor who thought the pain was psychological, but my husband and son both blamed the doctor and went to see a specialist, insisting on obtaining a diagnosis. Appendicitis was diagnosed, and the problem was resolved by undergoing surgery. When I was 40, my dad died suddenly, aged 74. I mourned my beloved father daily for the next 5 years. I was often angry, self-destructive, and suffering miserably from physical pain and blaming others. Our family doctor first diagnosed tendinitis in my wrist joints. Healing would take about 2 years. I poured myself and my pain and suffering into my paintings. I was afraid of suffering from arthritis, like both my parents. I had seen the benefits of homeopathy. Just a few grains of arnica before going for a run put pain to an aftermath of stiffness. As soon as our children were a bit older, we found a homeopathic doctor in town. Until she retired, we were well taken care of. Each child was interviewed and listened to and had their own specific treatment, which they loved. And so I trusted her. She was wise and helpful. Though I loved my homeopathic remedy and expected to take it for life, my next homeopathic doctor advised me against it. Oh boy. With recurring pain in my wrists, I was suffering terribly from inflammation. I was so angry and stressed. My dentist, another friend, tried to get me off the readily available painkiller ibuprofen. She warned me that I was harming my liver, but I couldn't stand the pain. I was often brought to tears. I remember vacuuming the house and fuming with blame and anger. I remember insisting that my adolescent son do grocery shopping with me because I was in too much pain to push a caddy. I remember spoiling the preparation of a family meal by wanting help. I was so afraid of being a victim and suffering from inevitable physical pain. My doctor sent me to see a rheumatologist. After he took careful x-rays of all the joints in my body, we talked. Then, as an afterthought, he asked me just one question. Was there anyone in my family with some weird disease? Well, yes, there was my little sister, 10 years younger than me. She was suffering from a little-known disease in France. I wrote the name of the condition on a piece of paper. Myelitis encephalomyelitis. A few days later, my doctor showed me the x-rays and read out the kind letter from her colleague. Pain and suffering don't show up on an x-ray. My joints were perfectly normal. So what was the diagnosis? It was left to my imagination. My thoughts went haywire. I was furious. I demanded a prescription. I couldn't believe that she didn't believe me. Did I have to wait till I was falling apart before they would believe me? I knew I was in pain, but they implied that I was imagining it and making it up. Was I going round the bend? There's a stigma attached to suffering from a mental illness. Was I driving myself mad? Was I a hypochondriac? Malade? Imaginare? I think that must be French. Malade? Imaginare? My anxiety fueled a 5-year love affair with astrology and 3-year flirtation with academia. Okay, my anxiety fueled a 5-year love affair with astrology and 3-year flirtation with academia. This was unceremoniously dumped when I serendipitously came across the 3 principles. Annika Hurwitz from the States told me at a meeting to beware of what was taught in universities. She told truth after truth after truth, and all the truth she told rang a bell. This was miraculous that I could hear it in the midst of my skeptical thinking. My anxious thinking was healed, but I couldn't imagine the possibility of physical healing yet. Annika Hurwitz told a story that put pain to a huge existential insecurity that I had been suffering from ever since my nightmares in early childhood. Cosmic chaos had followed me into adulthood. It was often overwhelming. I heard her say that she had witnessed infinite order in the universe, and I believed her. This is an essentially powerful spiritual realization. I see now that my anxiety and fears were connected to my belief that the world was chaotic. I'm going to read that again. That's a powerful sentence. I see now that my anxiety and fears were connected to my belief that the world was chaotic. But when I was able to experience love and kindness, it disappeared. The principle's understanding has given me a space to feel safe and cared for. The rest is a miracle of healing. Yowza. I'm going to pause that again. Nancy, you're on.
Well, it's interesting.
Fibromyalgia. Nancy.
Yeah, I started reading the book, I got it last week. And so I've been reading it in order from the beginning. I'm about page 80, but I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis about 13 years ago. And I was already very interested in mind-body connection. I mentioned, I think before, this book called When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate, MD, where he looks at the emotional habits, psychological habits, you might say, of people that then go on to develop these chronic conditions, sometimes just chronic pain, but they're all kind of related, according to him. It involves kind of a suppression of negative feelings that we all kind of do in our society innocently, but apparently the thoughts are there. We're just working hard to not see them, and it takes a toll on the body. So I was already interested in that when I was diagnosed in 2012, and my rheumatologist assured me that I was surprised because I already thought I was into this mind body stuff, and I thought, well, I don't suppress anything. I think and talk about my feelings all the time and my thoughts. So I don't suppress anything. So it was kind of humbling that, oh, you got rheumatoid arthritis. Oh, I may not be as flowing as I thought I was, but he assured me that it wasn't that bad at the time. I was having some stiffness in my hands, and a coworker said, oh, you got to get that checked out. So I said, okay. And, but I told the rheumatologist, he's starting to type in the prescription for me after listening to a few of my questions. And I said, oh, what are you typing in there? And he was giving me a prescription for a strong NSAID, which is like a strong Tylenol or ibuprofen, and then a methotrexate, which is a chemo drug. Most of the treatments they have for these chronic things basically boil down to suppressing your immune system, because your immune system is basically turning on you. And it's very interesting to read about that process from a biological level from Gabor Mate, from our thoughts to our body, innocently and unknown to most of us. Very fascinating. But I said, well, it's not that bad. I try to avoid harsh, interventions. And he just said, well, I said, could I wait until it gets bad? And he goes, well, you can wait, but you'll just have to take more. He had no doubt. And I was panicking because I didn't want to be crippled. But I'd already read enough of other approaches that I had enough confidence in myself to wait and see. And so I did. And these things come and go. I do think it's somewhat related to emotions. It's not like a quick, cause and effect, but over a lifetime of having certain patterns of thinking and maybe suppression, the body keeps the score, as some books have said. And so it's not always easy, but I felt like it probably had something to do with stressors that I thought I had and different emotions that occasionally it'd flare up. But most of these past 13 years, frankly, I've been symptom. And I take ibuprofen occasionally. But this year though, I've had more continual arthritis pain in the same spots, where before I just get free floating pain occasionally, but mostly not painful. But since this year, since I turned 71, I'm noticing it's sort of hanging around more. And last night I had one of the kind of pains that just flare up before I go to bed, and it's just an inflammation that throbs all night long. I can't sleep. Normally it's not that bad. Like twice a year I have something like this. So yeah, and it's hanging on today. So it's got me reading more about this stuff. And I skipped ahead to this chapter this morning. I just need some commiseration or something. And so that's why I wanted to read this, if that's okay. You'll stop me when you want me to then.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
For some reason, I always thought this world was weird. I started searching for something that would help me make sense of everything at quite an early age. I learned about meditation, Reiki, psychology, etc. I didn't have any big acute problems. I simply felt like exploring all these areas, and my life was going okay, including the usual ups and downs. And then one day I got sick. Pretty much from one day to another, nothing was the same anymore. It started with a very bad attack of back pain that made it impossible to even stand up for a few days. And for the first time in my life, I didn't get better as you usually do. I developed a chronic pain condition diagnosed as fibromyalgia. I think there's some crossover in people from that diagnosis and also things like rheumatoid arthritis. It's not quite such an easily discrete difference, but anyway, that's me. The pain was constant and quite debilitating. For years, I had to lie down and rest about 4 times a day just to get the pain down to a bearable level. I was extremely restricted in what I could do physically. No traveling, no going to the movies or out for dinner, no dancing, no running, no cleaning my home or cooking a meal. That took more than 15 minutes. And no pain medication would give any relief. The only option was opioids, and fortunately, I decided not to take them. I tried everything, every therapy, every diet, every healing technique, every psychotherapy. My husband and I even tried splitting up, thinking that maybe something was wrong with our relationship. And no, it wasn't, and I'm still married. Some things helped a bit, but nothing really made a difference. At some point, I came across some research about the brain and how chronic pain really works. I understand that the problem wasn't really with my body, it was with my nervous system, that somehow I got stuck in a constant fight or flight mode and kept my body from getting better. I found the work of Dr. John Sarno, who I read his book called The Divided Mind, very fascinating. Sorry, that I just got out. I had looked at it for years and it's fascinating. Sorry. Dr. John Sarno and Professor Mosley. And I was excited to hear about people recovering from chronic conditions just by learning about the brain and the nervous system. I bought a lot of books and joined some online groups and tried out all the techniques that were given out there. Understanding chronic pain and how it has nothing to do with any physical problem in the body actually helped me more than any of the things I tried before. I got less scared of the pain, but all the techniques to stop the pain that were advertised by the brain and pain researchers again didn't help me. I felt I had done all that before for years. The meditating and the breathing and the digging up of old emotions and the feeling your feelings. I was so sick of it. And I felt if I hadn't been able to dig up the right feeling until now, I probably simply wouldn't find it. And there was so much tension and stress in the constant trying. I tried so hard to not be stressed. I had a breathing tracker that started vibrating when my breathing got too shallow. I hated that thing. One day I complained about this in one of the chronic pain Facebook groups, and I got a comment from Hannah Studley saying, "What if that's the problem, all the trying?" This comment was the beginning of my journey with the three principles. I got into a chat with Hannah, looked up her website, read her book, and in a matter of days, started her painless program. My first Zoom call with Hannah was on New Year's Eve, and I remember it because in this first chat, I heard something new, something that made a difference. I had an insight. I can't remember what it was, but I still remember the feeling of wonder. The freedom of realizing that anything can change in an instant. After the Zoom call, my husband asked me what we talked about. I couldn't tell. He went out to see some friends for a New Year's Eve party, and I stayed home on my couch with my cats, savoring the newfound feeling of freedom and peace. So I continue, or do we? Okay. During the next days, I had some more Zoom calls with Hannah, and I felt so excited. Finally, there was something new, something that made sense. When the program with her ended, I realized that we hadn't once talked about my childhood or about the divorce of my parents or about any of this usual stuff you go on and on about in most kinds of therapy. This was so different. We talked about the mind and how it works. We talked about life itself and how it works. Finally, I found someone who talked about what to me looks like the real questions. What's going on here and how does it work? I fell in love with this beautiful and, in a way, simple teaching that holds so much depth and wisdom. So many things became clear to me. I wasn't one of the people who got rid of their pain immediately. What changed was my experience of it. Suddenly, I experienced deep peace and happiness in the middle of the pain. And I started realizing that the feelings of despair I had experienced for so long couldn't actually come from the pain. They had come from my thinking, or to be more accurate, from me believing in my low mood thinking. A lot of things started changing. My relationships seemed easier and more loving. I realized how tough and rigid I'd been with myself. For the next 2 years or so, I completely immersed myself in the 3P teachings, listening to a lot of talks, listening to Sid. In a lot of areas in my life, it was quite easy for me to see something new and to see the principles in action. Regarding the pain, I struggled with some very sticky beliefs and judgments about myself, causing me to hear even the kindest remarks of coaches or teachers as stressful. I'd be doing well for a while, enjoying all my newfound wisdom and insights, and then fall into a crisis with an attack of severe pain, thinking there must be something wrong with me, because if I'd been doing it right, the pain would have been gone by now. And then at some point, the struggling stopped. Sorry, I get a little emotional. I didn't sleep very well. It wasn't one special moment. It was an accumulation of learning and seeing something new again and again. The pain became uninteresting. And in a way, without me noticing it, it became less and less. And if there was a bad day, I didn't care anymore. It stopped meaning anything. It doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. It was just a bad day. And I used my common sense to take good care of myself. it's now about 4 years since I met Hannah, and I'll be forever grateful for her patience and perseverance in pointing everyone who is willing to listen in a new direction. It changed my life. I'm not 100% pain-free, but the difference is like day and night. And maybe the best thing, the thing that helped me most, is that what I found is worth so much more than just being pain-free. I found a glimpse of my true nature, of who I really am. I now truly know that the pain was a love letter from God, as Dr. Bill Pettit puts it so beautifully, an invitation to come home inside. So I kind of needed that. Like I said, I've had a little more pain, and then I had one of these severe ones yesterday, and I just couldn't sleep. And kind of like her, you think, okay, I'm doing it wrong. But I remembered what I've been learning when I first went to Dr. Howard. Uh, how many years? 8 or something years ago. I was there for chronic depression, not arthritis, which was pretty stable. But that's when I loved what she said, that Hannah said, that maybe you're trying too hard. And that's been a theme of me. I've had a lot of perfectionism my whole life. And even when you think you know that, it still comes back in your mind, kind of a little bit unawares to you, and you're kind of responding to it. And it's easy to do. I see it a little more now. And like the essay that you read, Lori, about that woman said that the world looked very chaotic to her. She believed it was chaotic. And I thought, that's been going on with me a lot. And anyway, and then I've been reading this book the past week or two. I was reading it yesterday, the beginning, and I never feel very emotional. I may cry every few years. I don't try not to. I just guess I tend to get stuff on my skin and hives. I've read was called suppressed weeping. I don't do it on purpose. So, but I just started feeling emotional yesterday. I just thinking and sharing some of these things which I hadn't done for a while, just kind of loosened up some stuff, some maybe painful thoughts, but mostly kind of got some of that wisdom back. And it's been very helpful to read these particular chapters to realize others are experiencing, we all are experiencing the similar things, and some of us have similar effects too, but it's all kind of coming from that direction. Anyway, I'm gonna get through it. At least I don't, mine just comes and goes. I'm grateful for that. And I have learned, kind of like she said now, I love it that it's a love letter from God. I don't have to feel guilty because I don't like taking pills and stuff. And I'm just trying to be so in charge. It doesn't work sometimes. But now I think that's okay. I can relax. I'm retired as well, so I'm still learning.
Yes, we all are. The learning never ends, right? Yeah, and from each other, we'll all learn from each other as we share what lands for us and what we're seeing. That's really beautiful, Nancy. Yeah. Do you know about Hannah's Facebook group? I think she calls it Painless.
No, just from reading this book, I'm seeing it come up.
Yeah.
Well, painless. Yeah, maybe I should check into that.
Check it out. Yeah, for sure. Pallavi is in there. Yeah. Yeah. Pallavi is there. Yeah. Hi, Wendy. Good to see you. Anybody else want to say anything? I'll do a time check. We got 15 minutes. The next story is short, tinnitus. But do you want to say anything about the last one? Anything else you want to say, Nancy? Because you're right, having a space like this to share what we're going through, I think is just so wonderful. It's sacred to me. to have a space, we know we can all come together and talk about what's going on
Well, I
for
wasn't sure how
us.
personal I should get. I'm kind of new to this, but I thought, well, I feel when people share, I mean, there's a limit to how much we want to vent, but I can relate to other people when we have. I mean, that's why this book is so interesting, is to read and learn about people's specific circumstances and how they approached it, and it hits home for me more that way, especially when we move on to a good direction then that help them. It means a lot to me. So anyway, thanks for letting me share that. I'm gonna go take a nap later.
Yeah, yeah, it's the word of hopeful, right? Gives us so much hope hearing other people's stories, how they
Yeah, it's
get
inspiring.
through it. Inspiring, yes, definitely. Yeah. And, you know, Sue would say, look for a good feeling, but he also said not to be afraid of when we don't have a good feeling. There's no experience that we need to be afraid of. It's just part of the human condition. I think one of you said it's a, life is a contact sport. It's
That
we'll
was one of my
never.
favorite quotes when I first started reading about Sid. There's several, but I think that's my favorite, and I think he featured it, that if he could get people to understand one thing, and it would change the world, and that is not to be afraid of your experience. And that I clung to that quite a bit. I thought, wow, thank you. That gave me, I needed a lot of reassurance, and it had the ring of truth, and I clung to that quite a bit.
Beautiful. Hmm. So, should we go on to tinnitus? Who wants to read? We're on page. This is somebody in Germany. I've not heard of Suzanne Vanessa R. 253. Any readers among us? I
I'll
can
go
read
ahead.
it. Oh, you
I
go,
can go ahead.
Elaine. Yeah.
All right. Some people have a special connection to mountains and snow and glide over the white beauty with complete confidence. I was born in the north of Germany where everything is flat. I was always a flat land kid. In my late 20s, I found myself spontaneously on rented skis in the Czech mountains. The boots were one size too big, and I wore 2 pairs of extra thick winter socks to make it work somehow. So I stood on the smallest and least dangerous hill of all ski slopes and started skiing. Went off track and crashed. This day changed my life. Since then, I have suffered from dizziness, pain in my cervical spine, and tinnitus, which also caused panic attacks and an anxiety disorder. The noise in my head kept me awake at night. I was constantly nervous because of the overtiredness and desperations of me being like this for the rest of my life. My mother moved in to live with me for half a year because I was constantly anxious. I would start crying during a walk in the woods because I couldn't hear a beautiful silence of nature anymore. I used to cover up my ears to check if the sound had changed in any way. Within the first year, I looked for help in forums where people affected by tinnitus complained about their suffering. I read many stories of people who had tried everything for years to get rid of the disease. Some were terribly desperate that they saw no more sense. On one hand, I felt some kind of relief to see that I was not alone with my worries. On the other hand, it gave me additional anxiety. Myself went to countless physicians. I had an MRI of the cervical spine. An orthopedist therefore suggested surgery on my cervical spine, but I refused. They looked at me and heard nothing. Only I heard this concert in my head, and it was driving me crazy. The ear specialist determined that my left stapes was not able to send the sound properly. I had that since I was a toddler because of middle ear infections. He was convinced after surgery my tinnitus would be gone. So I got an implant and was still hard of hearing, and the noise remained. Another otologist tried to use a device to mimic the frequency of my 3 tinnitus sounds and reprogram my brain. After the 4th appointment, I stopped the program. An internist suspected a bladder and kidney issue and prescribed various medications to improve the blood circulation and flush out bacteria. Physiotherapists diagnosed tension. Osteopathy helped only to a limited extent. In the psychiatric clinic I went to, they offered an extensive relaxation program. Meditation and muscle relaxation did not help at all. Gymnastics made it worse. The psychiatrist diagnosed a somatic disorder, whatever that meant. She put me on antidepressants with a small amount of sleeping meds so I could sleep. The first 2 nights it actually worked, but then, however, I started to develop suicidal thoughts, which suddenly made it seem quite easy to put an end to the whole miserable situation. Somehow I became aware that these were new thoughts, and I did not trust them. I left the clinic after 4 weeks, stopped taking the medication. I'm aware that this was not quite appropriate, but I just did it and ended up sleeping quite well in my own bed. Along my healing journey, I tried many healing methods out there, such as EFT, tapping, the emotion code, breathing exercises, shamanic journeys, Reiki, trauma therapy, and many more. Some worked, and they might have been the right step at the right time, and I know wisdom guided me to use them, but it wasn't simple. It was very complex to keep up with them every day in order to get results. I still kept searching for the perfect healing method. It was not enough. I didn't think I was healing enough. Fast forward 10 years later, when I stumbled upon the 3 principles, my life changed extensively. I didn't understand it all, but I felt there was something in it for me. I listened to stories of people whose lives had changed since they learned about the understanding. The first important realization I had was that I am perfectly okay. I started to notice when I was getting caught up in fears. Indicators were speeding up in my head and getting sensations like my heart racing and sweating, and urgent thinking about who could be the next specialist I would go to. Then I knew it was time for me to slow down. I'd been struggling for so long, and that fighting just created more battles. But I was tired and didn't want to go through any more processes by dissolving beliefs or guilt. It was relieving to see that I had innate perfect well-being. Underneath all that worrying and fearful thinking, somehow I trusted that. It felt true to me. It was so relieving to no longer have to ask myself what my illness was trying to tell me and to research the underlying cause, which I did for years. Nowadays, I see them as thinky thoughts. I forget about them whenever my focus is on something way more interesting. I don't check on them anymore and give them as much attention. And if it happens that I hear them, I'm not afraid of that experience. Tinnitus didn't scare me anymore. There are no life-threatening tumors in my head. Although I notice that they are good semiographs for showing me where I am in my state of mind, high or low mood, stressful thinking or quiet mind. And when I notice, it is enough. Then I know, or I might not, and both are okay. But most of the time I get back to more presence and peace. I'm not limited by my circumstances, and I'm grateful to learn the inside out understanding because I almost missed the beauty of life itself. When I see a tiny butterfly in the woods, I can even hear the silence of nature again. Can you hear the silence?
Mm. Mm. I think it's really important that seems to be emphasized theme today of ignore the stuff that you don't want in your life. Just ignore it and let your mind be at peace, whether it's just breathing, staying grounded, and taking care of yourself. I love the phrase, I wrote it down, I am perfectly okay.
Mhm.
That's so cool. Yeah, just wanted to add that. I have tinnitus too. When I first got it, I would say to my husband, what's that sound? What am I hearing? He's like, we kind of figured out what it was. And I actually don't hear it anymore. I don't pay it any attention. Of course, sometimes I can't hear, but that's okay too. Yeah. Hmm. Good stuff.
One of the things that came to me, I love metaphors and stuff. And after talking to Mark Howard for several sessions 8 years ago, and he very simply said, I think I said before, I said, I like what I'm hearing and learning about the nature of ourselves in the universe. And I don't know yet that life really works that way, the inside out, but it should. I just still feel like crap every morning, though, struggling with depression. And he just, he wasn't worried. His self-assurance gave me confidence. He said, well, you've been thinking that way for a while. It's kind of like, just give it time. And he was absolutely right. And I've never fallen into the trough like I did again. I have my ups and downs like all of us. But to me, the way I like to describe it is in the past when I was starting to deal with premenopausal and menopausal depression, whatever kind of it was, my seemed like my approach was to take up arms. When I'd feel this dip, I'd be afraid of it. It was so scary. And I'd put me right on the vigilance thing, and I'd be looking up stuff and going to all kinds of practitioners, trying diets, Reiki, shamanism, I mean, it was ridiculous. And what seemed to help me was letting go. So I thought it was like I took up arms when I was afraid and how I was feeling. And then I learned after talking to Mark, I mean, he didn't put it this way, but it just occurred to me. It's like, now if I feel like I'm going down, to me, it's like a message, lay down arms. I've probably been thinking a lot, or maybe I'm getting a cold or whatever. But that instead of like worrying more and thinking about it more, I mean, I still do that quite a bit, but more and more, it's easier for me to just, I mean, it's easier. Let go. How easy is it to not do something? I've been looking for that my whole life because I'm always striving and failing. So I thought, oh, how lovely that I could get my foot off the accelerator and things go better eventually. And I still think sometimes this is too good to be true. My whole life, it was always like, oh, you have to persevere and strive and effort. And it never worked for me, really. So I'm still getting used to how wonderful and beautiful you can let go. And well, that old saying, let go and let God. I mean, there's something to that, I guess. So it's interesting to see these examples too of that. And like Jerry, you said, you just don't worry about it now. And you don't even notice.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yep. I like that phrase, you are what you think about.
Mm.
True.
Okay.
There's only three of us.
Yeah, where'd Lori go?
It's strange. She hit the wrong button.
Maybe.
I'm glad I was here. I was tired. I thought, I don't think but I threw on a little bit of makeup so I wouldn't look so horrible. And I thought, yeah, who cares? I'm
Aw.
showing up.
It looked fine. It looked
So
fine.
Glad you did.
so I thought, yeah, because I could use this, a little gathering. I'm really enjoyed it.
Good. Good.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Well, my wall clock is singing again, so it's 2 o'clock and I've got to run.
No problem.
But good to see you both and others
Yes,
that were on for a minute.
next week.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
can't make it on Tuesdays, as you can tell. I'm frequently not there on Tuesdays, but Wednesdays work out really well. So look forward to seeing you next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care. Be
You
well.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's see.
Oh, I can't do.
Check it out. There we go. Whoop, I'm still here. Cheery. And